When you picture a locksmith, what do you see? You probably imagine someone getting you back in your car or house after you've locked yourself out. And yeah, that's definitely part of the job. But the real story of this craft, it's way more technical, a lot more complex, and honestly, just super fascinating. So today, we're going to unlock the secrets of what it really means to be a locksmith.
You know, the journey often starts with a career change you would never, ever expect. Take Philip, for example. He went from being an exterminator to a locksmith, and his story? It's not that uncommon. The path into this world is almost never a straight line, which is probably why the people in this trade are so resourceful and interesting.
So here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the kinds of people who find themselves in this line of work. Then we're going to get our hands dirty and see how locks actually work. After that, we'll dive into the art of the bypass, the cool stuff. And finally, we'll get real about what it takes to run a locksmith business. All right, first up, the calling. There's really no single way people get into this industry. It's not like being a plumber or an electrician where there's this clear-cut path through trade school. Locksmithing is a field people seem to find, a lot of times almost by accident.
The backgrounds are all over the map. You've got folks who grew up in the family business, cutting keys since they were kids. Then you have facility managers who just got tired of calling someone else and decided to learn it themselves. We're even seeing people from IT and tech, guys who are drawn to the mechanical puzzle of it all. It can be a family duty, a random opportunity, or just a lifelong obsession with figuring out how things work.
Okay, so now we have a sense of who a locksmith is. Let's get into what they have to know. And it all begins with understanding the single most common lock you probably use every single day.
This right here is the heart and soul of most locks, the pin tumbler. Inside, you have a cylinder that turns. That's called the plug. And holding it in place is a series of tiny pin stacks. But the most important thing to see here is that tiny gap between the plug and the outer casing. That's called the shear line. And that shear line, well, that's everything.
So when you put the right key in, the jagged cuts on the key lift each one of those pin stocks to a very specific height. And when they're all lifted just right, the break between the upper and lower pins lines up perfectly with that shear line. Suddenly, there's nothing blocking the way. The plug can turn and boom, the lock opens. It's simple but pretty brilliant.
But try the wrong key? Now the pins are all over the place. Some are too high, some are too low. This means that parts of the pins are still crossing that shear line, physically jamming the plug and stopping it from turning. The lock stays locked. It's that simple.
So you're probably thinking, if it's so precise, how can a lock be picked? Well, here's the secret. No lock is perfect. The little holes for the pins are never drilled in perfect alignment. This creates something called the binding defect. It means when you apply just a little bit of turning pressure, one pin, and only one, will get stuck first. This little flaw is the vulnerability that makes the whole art of lock-picking possible. And exploiting that tiny defect, that's the entire basis for the art of the bypass. This isn't about some kind of movie magic. It's about using the lock's own mistakes against itself.
So picking a lock is basically just a hunt. You find that one pin that's binding, you lift it just enough until you feel a little click, and it sets right at the shear line. Then you move on to the next pin that starts to bind. You're basically doing the key's job, but one pin at a time.
To do this, you really need two simple tools. First, a tension tool. That's what you use to apply that gentle turning pressure that makes a pin bind. Second, you need a pick, and they come in all shapes and sizes, from little hooks for targeting one pin at a time to rakes that are designed to hit a bunch of pins all at once.
And this leads to two main ways of doing it. Single pin picking is the slow, quiet, methodical way. You're hunting down each pin one by one. It's super precise. Then there's raking, or scrubbing. That's all about speed. You're just moving a rake-shaped pick in and out really fast, hoping to jiggle all the pins into place. It's not as elegant, but when someone's locked out in the cold, fast is good.
But bypassing a lock, it goes way beyond just picking. A locksmith's bag of tricks is deep. You've got things like a mica shim. Think of it as the pro version of the old credit card trick. Door spreaders, to make a gap in a plastic door. Bump keys, which are wild. They use kinetic energy to make all the pins jump at once. And yeah, even electric pick guns that do all the vibrating for you.
So, with all these cool technical skills, you'd think the job is all about dramatic break-ins. But now, let's talk about the reality of the business, because it tells a totally different story.
This quote from Jeff Moss, a veteran locksmith, just hits the nail on the head. So many people think, hey, I can pick locks, I should be a locksmith. But the truth is, that's just a tiny
tiny piece of the pie.
The reality is, it's all over the place. A huge chunk of the day is residential work, like rekeying all the locks for a new homeowner. Then you've got automotive, cutting and programming modern car keys, which is a whole specialty. Then there's commercial work, safes and vaults. Each one of these is its own world. Emergency lockouts? That's just a tiny slice.
And that means a locksmith's real toolkit isn't just about picks and wrenches. It's about knowing thousands of different parts. It's about customer service, because you're usually dealing with people who are stressed out. If you run your own show, you have to be a business manager. And maybe most important of all, this entire trade is built on ethics and trust.
And getting started isn't cheap. It's a serious commitment. To set yourself up with a van, all the specialized key cutters and programmers, plus an inventory of parts for an auto locksmith business, you're looking at around $30,000 right out of the gate.
And you know, the legal stuff can be a real headache. In some states, you need a license, background checks, the whole 9 yards. In other states, nothing. It's the Wild West. And in some places, just having lockpicks without a license is illegal. It's a total patchwork of laws you have to figure out.
With all that going on, there's a real sense in the industry that new blood is needed. A lot of experienced locksmiths are getting close to retirement, and there's a genuine need for a younger generation to step up, learn the trade, and help it evolve with new technology.
So you see, the locksmith's journey is a story of constant change, from ancient wooden locks to digital key cards. It's a profession that has to live in two worlds at once, old-school mechanical problem-solving and brand-new cutting-edge tech, which brings us to the big question for its future. In a world of smart locks and biometrics, what does the future of this ancient craft even look like?